Welcome to Heart to Heart with Anna, featuring your host, Anna Jaworski. Our program is designed to empower the CHD or congenital heart defect community. Our program may also help families who have children who are chronically ill by bringing information and encouragement to you in order to become an advocate for your community. Now, here is Anna Jaworski.
Welcome to this season 9 3/4 episode of Heart to Heart with Anna. I am Carol Raimondi, and I'm filling in for Anna today. I am a former guest and a cc-TGA heart warrior. Today's show is a view from the other side of the bed, and our guest host is my dear friend, Roslyn Rivera. Roslyn is an adult living with CHD whose experience as a patient in the hospital led her to become a pediatric cardiac intensive care nurse. She was diagnosed the day she was born with partial atrio-ventricular septal defect and underwent open heart surgery at 3 years of age to repair this defect. At 10 years old, she had her second open heart surgery to replace her mitral valve with a mechanical valve. Roslyn currently works as a nurse educator for the Novick Cardiac Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization. With a team of international medical professionals, she travels to developing countries to provide cardiac care and surgery for children. Roslyn has worked with teams taking care of children with heart disease in Ecuador, Dominican Republic, Iraq, Libya, Iran, Ukraine, and Russia. She has witnessed the worldwide impact of CHD and strives to provide education and support for those living with CHD. Welcome to Heart with Anna, Roslyn.
Thanks for having me.
Roslyn, can you share with us why you wanted to become a nurse?
Sure. I believe the first time I thought about becoming a nurse was actually when I was in the hospital when I was 10. So like you said, I had my second heart surgery then, and I remember being very interested in what was going on, what the nurses were giving me, the medications, the IV pumps. I just thought it was really interesting. And in fact, my heart surgeon let me see and hold a replica of the heart valve that they used to replace my heart valve. And it's like a little circular piece of metal with cloth around it. And I remember holding it and thinking that it was so cool that this little piece of metal was inside of my heart and it was now making my heart work better. And while I was in the hospital, I don't have any memories of being in pain or being frightened even. And I think that has a lot to do with my nurses. I think they took really good care of me. They were really strong advocates to keep me out of pain. It made me think what a strong job that must be for them. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to become a nurse and to take care of kids like me. I knew even then that I liked kids and I wanted to take care of them. So basically at the age of 10 is, I think, when I decided I was going to become a nurse.
That's awesome. I feel as a nurse myself and a CHD warrior, I knew around the same time that I wanted to go into the medical profession. At first I thought I wanted to be a cardiologist, but then I realized I didn't like school that much. So I decided it would be much better to be a nurse and I would be able to do a lot of the bedside care and things that I appreciated too from the nurses that took care of me. I feel like my story is similar to yours as well. I had a nurse that took care of me who also had congenital heart defects. So I wanted to kind of follow in her path because she was such a great support and role model for me.
Yeah, that's really neat.
So what was your path like on the journey to become a nurse?
So like I said, I knew when I was 10, so I kind of, was interested in medical books. I didn't read medical books, but I liked the human body books that they were geared for children. In high school, I had the option of a science class my senior year. I could either take anatomy or physics, and I chose to take anatomy. So I started then to prepare a little bit for nursing school. And when I was applying for colleges, my parents encouraged me to go to a private school. So I was looking for private schools in California where I grew up that had a nursing major. So I applied to a few different schools, and my dad even took me to visit some schools that were in the San Francisco area. And I grew up in Los Angeles. And we visited some schools, and I fell in love with the San Francisco area. So I chose a school up there, which was 6 hours from home. My first time living away from home as an adult and learning to take care of myself was kind of an eye-opening experience. But I love nursing school, and actually learning about anatomy and nursing actually helped me to better understand my own body, my own heart, And so that was helpful for myself as well. I learned how to take care of my patients, but also more about myself and my own health. So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in nursing. And while I was in nursing school, my class rotations in the hospital is when I really solidified what kind of nurse I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be a pediatric nurse, but I also loved my ICU rotation. And being in the intensive care requires some critical thinking, and it's a fast-paced environment. So I combined those, and I actually started my first job in the pediatric intensive care unit at Lucille Packard at Stanford. It was a really high acuity unit. The kids were pretty sick, and it was very challenging. But that's where I started, and I learned so much just within the first year. And it was great.
That's amazing. That's such an incredible story to listen to, just because, I mean, it shows how really all of us adult CHD warriors can do whatever we put our mind to. We're not limited by our health. It took me a little bit longer because I had to stop and have one of my surgeries while I was in nursing school. Did you have any issues at all in nursing school as far as your health? Did you have to have any issues when you were doing clinicals or kind of staying on top of things?
Actually, I did not. I have been lucky and been fairly healthy. My last surgery was when I was 10, and all through nursing school and through most of my 20s, I've been fairly healthy, especially my heart's. I haven't had any problems, at least not until recently, I guess. But no, nursing school, I was able to handle the classes and the classwork and clinicals fairly easy.
Great. That's such an amazing thing to be able to go into a field where you're so familiar with it. I think when we were doing our anatomy and going through the heart, I think it took me a little bit longer to actually realize what a normal heart looked like, because I was so used to having everybody describe to me what my heart looked like. So I had to try to rearrange my mind a little bit looking at normal hearts. I know everybody, when it was time for the congenital heart unit, I think everybody came to me for advice and practice and listening to heart sounds and all sorts of stuff. So,
yeah, they definitely listened to my heart during the anatomy rotation where we're listening to heart sounds, and because mine was different, mine clicks.
Yep. Yeah, mine didn't click at the time, but they definitely had quite the murmurs that the nursing instructors just loved using me as a tool for everybody.
Right.
Thank you, Roslyn, for sharing this information with us. Now it's time for a commercial break, but don't leave yet. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Roslyn about how she relates to patients and families when we come back after this brief commercial break.
Home Tonight Forever by the Baby Blue Sound Collective.
I think what I love so much about this CD is that some of the songs were inspired by the patients.
Many listeners will understand many of the different songs and what they've been inspired by. Our new album will be available on iTunes, Amazon.com, Spotify.
I love the fact that the proceeds from this CD are actually going to help those with congenital heart defects.
Enjoy the music.
Home Tonight Forever.
The most common themes that I hear is why.
She always needed a lot of attention. She had strokes.
Even though it's a natural inclination to withdraw from the CHD community, I think being a part of it helped me be part of the solution.
Heart to Heart with Michael. Please join us every Thursday at noon Eastern. I'm Michael Lieben, and I'll be your host as we talk with people from around the world who have experienced those most difficult moments. You are listening to Heart with Anna. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our show, please send an email to Anna Jaworski at anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. That's anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. Now, back to Heart with Anna.
Welcome back to our show, Heart to Heart with Anna, a show for the congenital heart defect community. Today's show is A View from the Other Side of the Bed, and our guest is my dear friend, Roslyn Rivera. Roslyn is a heart warrior and a nurse who cares for children with congenital heart defects, and she just finished telling us about her path to becoming a nurse. Roslyn, can you tell me, do you share your own CHD story with your patients and families? And if so, what is their usual response?
Yes, I actually do sometimes share my story with my patients, but more often it's with the parents. The parents are usually very overwhelmed seeing their babies attached to so many wires and tubes and machines beeping and seeing that big incision down their chest. It can be very overwhelming, as you can imagine. And sometimes when I feel my story might offer some hope, I'll share it. And I'll tell them I was once that child in the bed, actually twice. I was once attached to all those tubes, but here I am now standing next to you. I grew up and I've had a full life. I became a nurse and I traveled the world to take care of babies that were like me. And for the parents who sometimes they worry about how that scar will affect their daughter as she grows up and becomes a teenager, they're worried it's going to be something awful to look at or she'll be embarrassed by it. And I've actually told them, my parents taught me to show off my scar with pride because it meant that I survived something and that I'm strong. And especially the dads of those little girls they always smile when they hear me say that because, it's something that they do definitely think about. And it is, important for them to know that their child isn't really that different. And that scar is something that will be with them for the rest of their life. But it's because it's a story of them surviving something traumatic when they were a kid. And it shows their strength, really. And for the kids that are a little bit older, I do share my story with them sometimes, especially on my trips overseas when I don't speak the language. I'll just kind of show them my scar and they'll look at me and smile and be really excited to see, wow, this nurse who's been giving me medicine the past couple days and checking my IVs knows what I'm going through. They see my scar and they look at theirs and they're like, wow. I'm assuming that's what they're thinking. Like I said, if we don't speak the language. So I think it's generally something that my story can offer some hope, especially to those worried parents. And it's funny, sometimes I will tell one parent my story, and then later in the day, another parent will come up to me because she's been talking to, the other mom, and they'll give me a special thank you, like without even saying anything else, but I know they'll point at my scar and say thank you. And I think that they feel, as me being their child's nurse, that I do really understand what their child's going through. And I think that they think that I'm giving the best care that their child can have because I understand.
Absolutely. They must be so grateful for you, Roslyn. I mean, they just must be so relieved to see that you have been through it and that you are doing great things and being a nurse and taking care of their children. And same thing with the older kids, to be able to see that, that gives them hope as well, like you said, that you're doing these amazing things and being able to take care of patients like them. And that may inspire them to do the same thing that you're doing, just like you were inspired by your nurses, as I was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm open to sharing my story, too. A lot of times when I was working as a cardiac nurse, it was more in an adult practice, not as much congenital, a few congenital patients here and there. But even still, a lot of the patients would ask me about my scar and say, oh, did you have the same type of surgery that I did? And I always say, well, mine was a little bit different because a lot of theirs was bypass surgery. But I always tell them I had my chest open the same way yours was opened, even though they did something different inside. And it gave them such a sense of relief to know that I could understand what they were going through. And a lot of times, when they would call, they would specifically ask to talk with me because they knew I would understand if they were having a symptom or concern. I think that just puts their mind at ease, the parents, the kids, other patients. It just really does a lot to help them when they know that somebody else who's taking care of them has been through it.
Right.
Are there times, though, like you have a patient going through something that might hit too close to home? If so, how do you cope with that?
So I've taken care of patients who have had the same defect as me or the same valve replacement. And for the most part, I still find it interesting. Sometimes on my international trips, I can go into the operating room and see what the surgeon's doing. And I still am pretty fascinated by the anatomy of the heart, especially a CHD heart, how different it is. So for the most part, it's still interesting to me. It's not too worrisome for me. But in the past couple years with my cardiologist, we've been talking about my need for surgery again in the future. And sometimes when I do have patients that have had a valve replacement, that I will have to have a valve replacement in the future, it makes me a little bit worried because I think to myself, well, that's going to be me again in that bed, but I'm an adult now, and that's going to be me with my chest open again. So it's a little bit difficult, but I also see those patients get well and get out of bed and be discharged from the hospital. So in some sense, it gives me some hope too, to see those patients get better. And
Absolutely. Sure, it works both ways. You give them hope and they give you hope right back.
right. And there are times too when, patients do have complications and some of them may not survive. And it's definitely difficult in any case as a nurse if that were to occur. And in those sad times, I definitely do mourn the children. But the way that I cope with that is I try to remember all the really sick kids that miraculously got better and got out of the hospital. But it's still not easy.
No, it's always got to be, it's always kind of sits in the back of your mind, I'm sure. Like you said, especially when you're seeing these patients that have your same defect that might be having more complications. And I know just in our CHD community, it's so hard when we see someone who's gotten very sick or passed with our same defect or any defect really, but especially I think it hits close to home when somebody with our same defect passes. And that always is a very emotional time because you are mourning them, but you also are looking at your own mortality as well. But I think as a patient going through that, seeing your patients go through that too, it's got to be just as hard because you're the one taking care of that person. You feel responsible for helping to get that person better. So Roslyn, I'm sure you meet so many people across the world and so many patients that you really get close with from spending such an intimate time with them. Do you ever keep in touch with patients once they leave the hospital?
I do, with some patients, with their parents actually. With the social media world that we have now, it's really easy to keep in touch with parents via Facebook. Not always personally, but there are times when our team will receive either a picture or an email, either from the parent or from the cardiologist in whichever country it may be, of a child who we care for months later, years later. And it's actually really inspiring. Recently, I saw a video of a little girl. She's now 1 year old. We took care of her last year in Iran, and she was a newborn baby and had a complex defect. And her parents came to Iran from Iraq because they knew our team would be there. And she got her life-saving heart surgery. And she was still in the hospital when we left. But a year later, her parents sent us a video of her dancing around. She's 1 year old now, dancing around in her little dress. And it was really amazing to see. Because, she was so sick for those first few days of her life. And now she's just flourishing and growing and gaining weight. It's so lovely to see the little babies all chunky a year later and they're 2 years later when they're gaining weight and from not having to struggle to eat anymore.
Right. Oh, it's got to be such a wonderful feeling to see that and to not just wonder what happens, to actually get to see some of that feedback and see how wonderful they're doing.
Yeah, it's really lovely to be able to see them, especially those that were really sick in the ICU.
Oh, absolutely.
Thriving in their everyday lives.
I'm sure a lot of times you leave there wondering what's going to happen with these babies. And, I'm sure sometimes you never find out, but I'm sure those stories like that you do find are just have to be amazing to be able to see what a great job they're doing.
Yes, it's really amazing, really inspiring. It keeps me going back.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. So now it's time for another short commercial break, but don't leave yet. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Roslyn about endurance on the job. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
When I saw so many of these CHD groups growing, I found family just ready to join me.
Anyone who is a member of the adult congenital heart defect community can be a guest on our show.
We have a great year planned, and we look forward to sharing other interesting topics.
Heart to Heart with Nicole and David, serving the ACHD community, Wednesdays at noon Eastern.
Hi, I'm John Montez of NBC's hit acapella show, The Sing-Off. In acapella music, it takes a team to create a sound that many will enjoy, just like it'll take a team to help my good friend Miles Schweitzer, an HLHS survivor. Let's help Miles fulfill his dream and make a big enough sound to bring awareness to congenital heart disease. Please visit him at gofundme.com/The Miles Project. Miles with the Y. Again, that's gofundme.com, The Miles Project. This is from Miles.
Welcome back to our show, Heart to Heart with Anna, a show for the congenital heart defect community. Today's show is a view from the other side of the bed, and our guest is my dear friend, Roslyn Rivera. We just finished talking with Roslyn about her relationship with her patients. Now, we do only have a few minutes left, but I'd like to have you answer a couple of questions before we're done, Roslyn. So can you tell me, how does your body handle the physical stress of that job, and has it changed as you've gotten older?
I started nursing when I was 22, so I was fairly young, energetic, and my heart didn't really hold me back from anything at that point in my life. And I worked night shift actually for the first 8 years of my career. And honestly, I was really good at it. I was really good at sleeping during the day and working at night. I didn't have any problems. And I was able to handle the 12-hour shifts with ease, really. But over the past few years, I recognized my body telling me to slow down. I'm now in my 30s, and I've actually developed some more complications with my heart. I've been having some palpitations that we can't really pinpoint as to why. Perhaps we think they're either related to stress or a lack of sleep or excessive travel. So I made some changes so that I can keep myself healthy. And I started a day shift job actually about 2 years ago, and that's gotten me more routine with sleep, and I've been able to handle the 12-hour shifts still pretty well. Before I used to work 4 or 5 shifts in a row, and now I don't work more than 2, maybe 3. It's pretty hard for me to do more than 2. I do get tired. But I basically have learned to take breaks when I need to and to rest when I can so that I can continue to be a nurse because I love it.
Yeah, that's definitely key, is knowing to listen to your body and know exactly when you need to step back a little bit. And I think as we grow up, we kind of learn how to recognize when we need to back off a little bit when we're overdoing it. And I think it definitely has to apply, especially in a job that's physically stressful like nursing. That's great that you still are able to do 12-hour shifts, and I'm sure a day shift is much more normal for you too.
Yes.
So when you're away traveling around the world, what is it like to be away from your regular physicians?
My adult congenital cardiology team is pretty amazing. I've discussed my international travels with them. They know what I do for a job, and they're very helpful, and they work with my schedule and they work with me, especially while I'm gone. The nurse practitioners that are part of my team are very easily accessible via email, and I can email them any question wherever I am in the world, and they will get back to me within 24 hours, usually within 5 or 6 hours at the very longest. So if I have any problems, I know they're there and they're available. And they do realize that I have pretty good knowledge about my heart and my overall health, so that if I do get into trouble, I will contact them. But also, when I am traveling, especially on the medical trips I go on, I'm with a team of physicians and nurses. So I am pretty well taken care of if anything were to happen. And knock on wood, I've been very healthy while traveling. So it's not too frightening.
That's good. I'm sure that the doctors and nurses that you travel with are all very protective of you, and it's nice to be able to travel with a team of cardiologists and cardiac surgeons and nurses that, even though you still have your regular physicians that you can contact quickly, at least you're with a group of people who definitely have way more knowledge than most would if you're traveling on your own.
Yeah.
So tell me, what advice would you have for young CHD adults who are thinking about going into the medical profession?
I believe that CHD adults have so many stories to tell about their own medical experiences, whether it's hospitalizations or discussions with their doctors or ER visits or even just frequent lab draws, that I think that they have so much to offer to patients from their own personal experience. If I hear of somebody that, especially a CHD person or anybody with any medical issue that wants to go into the medical field, I really encourage them, because for me, I utilize my own personal experience to help me care for my patients. Like I said, I was that child in the bed and I got great nursing care, and I want to give that same nursing care to the patients that I have. So I use my own experience. And I believe that CHD adults have an undeniable ability to relate to their patients and to connect to them on a different level. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in the medical profession, especially a CHD adult, and not just nursing. There's so many areas in the medical field that you can go into. You can be an X-ray tech, you can be a doctor, you can be a respiratory therapist. There's so many options out there. You can change jobs fairly easily, move around and grow.
Yeah, I was definitely grateful when I was working as a nurse, when it was too physically hard for me to work on a medical floor. I was able to switch to a cardiology practice that was definitely less physically demanding. And I think that's just one of the nice benefits of being in the medical profession, that you can switch from something that might be physically more demanding to something that's less stressful on your body. And I also agree with you. I mean, I think the huge thing is we have so much more empathy that others couldn't give just based on our own experiences. I mean, I feel like there's definitely lots of wonderful, wonderful nurses and doctors out there. And I feel, though, that the ones that have been through something, who've gone through medical issues in their life, they understand the best and they can relate the most to what you're going through. So I always encourage anyone who's considering it as well to continue to pursue it, because I feel like it is really giving back for all that was done for us as we were growing up. Thank you so much, Roslyn, for coming on the show today. I am so glad you were able to come and speak with us and share your experiences with us.
Thank you so much. It was great being on with you today.
Well, this concludes this episode of Heart to Heart with Anna. I am your guest host for today, Carol Raimondi. Thank you for listening, and please come back next week on Tuesday at noon Eastern Time. Until then, please find and follow our radio show on Spreaker. And remember, my friends, you are not alone.
Heart to Heart with Anna is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a non-profit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to uplift, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at www.congenital-heart-defects.com for information about CHD, the hospitals that treat children with CHD, summer camps for CHD survivors, and much, much more. Thank you again for joining us this week. We hope you have been inspired and empowered to become an advocate for the congenital heart defect community. Heart to Heart with Anna, with your host Anna Jaworski, can be heard every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time.